peace plan that was briefed to some of the press late last night is tentative. It is unconfirmed. It's only what's been briefed out to some of the press. And undoubtedly, it will be subject to quite a lot of pressures on all sides. But as far as we can tell, this is what's being said, that within the whole battlefield, there'll be a freezing, more or less, where the front lines now are. So the famous front line that we've got used to, this big semicircle, will more or less freeze. And that means that the Russians would have to give up the ambition to have the whole of the four areas that they took, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson. In September 2022, they annexed them all. They just declared that they were all Russian, even though they only then had 2/3 of them. And they still don't have more than about 4/5 of them. And indeed, in Kherson, they took the whole of Kherson itself originally and then were kicked out of there in the autumn of 2022. So the Russians would have to accept that they're not going to get, under these proposals, everything that they claimed. The Ukrainians would have to accept that the whole of Crimea that was taken in 2014 in the first Russian invasion would be de jure given to Russia, that the Russians would be recognised as having control of Crimea. Now, that's something that the Americans may say will give you formal control of Crimea. I'm not sure the Europeans and many other states in the world will go along with that because there's a very big principle involved. But it would mean that the Ukrainians would have to accept that they have permanently lost Crimea. The Russians would have to withdraw a little bit from a couple of areas around the Dnieper River. The Dnieper River is critical to Ukraine. You've only got to look at where it flows from north to south to understand that. And the Russians would have to withdraw under these proposals a little bit from the river, where they were driven out from Kherson across the river. They'd have to withdraw a bit further away from the river in a couple of places in order to give the Ukrainians complete access to the river, which, of course, is very important to their economic well-being, getting out to the western part of the Black Sea. And then there's the question of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, very important. The Russians have taken a lot of the Zaporizhia area and they occupy the power plant. But they don't occupy the city of Zaporizhia, a very important industrial city, 750,000 people before the war. And that's really important. Whatever happens to the Zaporizhia plant, the Russians can't continue to control it in any stable ceasefire. So one proposal is that the Americans might control it. We'll see where that goes. So that's an idea of the territorial basis of these proposals. But along with that also goes the idea that Ukraine will give up forever the idea of joining NATO, and that, again, is something that is plausible but won't be easy to accept. And what isn't clear is whether there is a willingness for other states to be involved in a peace support or a peace enforcement mission. What's being briefed out is that the Americans are interested in having the Europeans involved in some way, along with non-European or non-NATO states, to look after the whole of this 1,000-kilometre boundary between the Russians, where the Russians are fighting and where the Ukrainians are fighting, a 1,000-kilometre long front line. That's a pretty big peace line to police. Somebody might have to police it. And the Russians have said that they won't accept any NATO troops anywhere in Ukrainian territory, but of course Ukraine will remain a sovereign state, so they can have whoever they want to invite in if they're prepared to come. Lots still to discuss. The fact is that this is an outline of a peace plan which is being pushed very hard by the United States. We assume by the 30th of this month, which is 100 days since Donald Trump took office, and he has a very big stake in showing that he's brought some sort of ceasefire to Ukraine in the first 100 days. But most ceasefire plans take a lot longer than this to negotiate, and I think we're a long, long way yet from a plan that looks genuinely plausible.